Hello, everyone. Welcome to the Connecticut Psychological Association's Social Justice Speaker Series. We are honored to have Dr. Mikaru Lasher and Mr. Brian Lasher as our esteemed speaker tonight. The title of tonight's talk is The Application of Financial Psychology to Promote Social Justice. This session focuses on specific steps to decrease disparities and increase financial literacy presented by both psychologists and financial planners to help psychologists and professionals bring these to their sessions. A warm welcome to our speakers. My name is Shiva, and I'm the chair of the Social Justice Committee at the Connecticut Psychological Association. Joining me today are our dedicated social justice members, Kyler, Andrew, Lena, and I'm hoping that Anne and Beth will join us. Now I'm going to hand it over to Lena to provide you with donors' information.
Okay, hello everyone. A little bit of technical difficulties there, but the Social Justice Speaker Series acts as a catalyst for our shared goals of empowering ourselves, our clients, and the communities we serve. To sustain this important work, we do rely on fundraising and the generosity of those who believe in the power of education and awareness of our biases and assumptions. We sincerely thank all donors moving forward and are truly grateful to our sponsors. Your support is the foundation that keeps this vital work alive and thriving. And so we could see Stacy Tata has generously donated $5,000 to the SJSS in memory of her beloved parents. And we also have the comprehensive neuropsychological services for the 6th consecutive year. And we also have our community stakeholder committed to awareness through education. So thank you to those. Now I will hand it over to Kyler, who will share additional information with you.
Thank you. So, on behalf of the Planning Committee, we're delighted you could join us this evening and sincerely hope you'll continue to participate in our future speaker sessions. And we are enthusiastic about Dr. Mikaru Lasher and Mr. Brian Lasher's presentations. But as a quick reminder, CPA Social Justice Speaker Series provides free monthly meetings to CPM members, the broader Connecticut community, and our nationwide supporters. And as we engage in today's discussion, please be mindful that this is a public forum and portions of the sessions may be recorded. So we encourage you to have thoughtful dialogue and while being cautious about sharing sensitive, confidential, or personally identifiable information in verbal comments or in the chat. So I welcome you to our speaker series this evening, and I'll hand it over to Shiva to share the speaker's biography.
Thank you, Kyler. Dr. Mikaru Lasher is a neuropsychologist and a financial behavior specialist. She recently completed a graduate certificate in financial psychology and behavioral finance from Creighton University and holds a Ph.D. from Wayne State University in psychology. Miki has had a private practice in Walton, Connecticut, doing assessment and therapy with children and adolescents for the past 15 years. Recently, she has also been working in an integrated financial advising program at Euclid Harding LLC. She is the past president of the Connecticut Psychological Association. Mr. Brian Lasher is managing director and senior advisor at Euclid Harding, where he helps clients navigate the human side of major financial and life transitions. For more than 25 years, Brian has advised high net worth individuals and families in senior leadership roles, including chief investment officer of a private equity firm, managing director at a subsidiary of a Fortune 50 insurance company, and vice president at the Forbes 400 family office. He holds an M.B.A. in investment management and finance from Columbia Business School and a Bachelor of Science in Mechanical Engineering from Massachusetts Institute of Technology. It is my distinct honor to invite our speakers to guide us through what promises to be an insightful and inspiring presentation. The stage is yours.
Thank you, Shiva. Our presentation today is called The Application of Financial Psychology to Promote Social Justice.
So I'll just add a few comments about Euclid Harding in case you're not familiar with it. Essentially, Euclid Harding supports advisors and the people they serve through major financial and life transitions. And we also work with business owners, families, and senior executives. What we've learned over the years is that math is really the hard part, which Shiva alluded to, is the human part. And that's why we blend rigorous financial strategy with applied behavioral psychology, because big decisions aren't purely technical, they're emotional, relational, and often shaped by culture, power, and history.
So today we're going to talk about financial psychology and literacy and how it can be applied as an important part of social justice work. John Hope Bryant, who founded Operation Hope, a nonprofit financial education program serving low-income communities, calls financial literacy the civil rights issue of this generation because it is the key to economic inclusion and empowerment. Financial literacy refers to knowledge about healthy financial practices and will be described in more detail in this presentation.
So I want to invite you into a very brief experiential exercise. So there's nothing to solve, no right answers. I'm going to show you something in a moment, but before I do, here's the invitation. Pay attention to the very first feeling in your body when it appears, and if you have a piece of paper and a pen, write it down. One word is enough. Okay, so now a quick question. Who wrote down something that you'd prefer not to share with the room? Sort of raise your hand just to yourself. If anybody's willing, no pressure, would one person like to share just that one word? Please unmute yourself and let us know. All right, we have no brave people this evening.
I'm going to step out on a limb here. I wrote scarce.
Scarce. Okay, that's a good one. So I've done this in a number of professional settings, and almost every time someone has a strong reaction. Luckily, Kyler's is not too bad. Scarce, I think we all deal with scarcity. So I'll share a story. In one group, a person wrote down the word terror. So when invited, and we didn't want to put her too much on the spot, only as much as she wanted, she shared that her father worked entirely on commission. Every day between about 5 and 5:30 p.m., she would brace herself in her room because the mood of the household depended that evening on how much money and how money went that day for her dad. Good day meant safety. Bad day meant unpredictability. So for her nervous system, money wasn't abstract. It was almost a weather report and a challenge to get through at the end of the day. So here's one of the questions we'll explore today. Why does money evoke such strong embodied responses? If a single symbol like this dollar sign can carry that much charge, imagine what daily exposure to financial insecurity does over time. The next slide grounds this in the research. Money and the economy consistently rank among the top stressors in the US. And this is from something that you all are familiar with. This is the American Psychological Association, or APA, and they conduct an annual survey on stress in America to help us understand what are the primary stressors impacting the public. The survey has consistently found that money and the economy are among the top 5 causes of stress in this country since they began reporting on it in 2007, right before the great financial crisis. Only this past year has financial stress been supplanted by something else. And I bet you know what that is. It's worry about the future of our nation. And that's the #1 cause of stress in the 2025 report. So what are the things that people commonly stress about when they think about money? Many of us worry about not having enough to make ends meet, not to mention being able to save enough for the future. We worry about providing for our families and education for our children. Zooming out, a social justice lens helps us to see that financial stress is not simply an individual problem to manage. It often reflects structural conditions, wages, housing costs, healthcare costs, and the uneven distribution of stability and safety.
There is a way to get a handle on our financial situation, and it involves psychology, or more specifically, financial psychology. Financial psychology is defined as the application of psychology to personal finance, using principles and ideas from many areas of study, such as cognitive psychology, behavioral psychology, developmental psychology, and marriage and family therapy. As described by Dr. Brad Klontz, who has pioneered research in this area and actually coined the term, financial psychology seeks to integrate science, theory, and practice to understand and predict financial behaviors, as well as to promote sound financial decision-making and good financial health. Financial psychologists focus on providing small interventions to help a client resolve money-related problems related to their behavior. With financial psychology, we can get a better understanding of our beliefs and emotions around money, which can help us behave in ways that improve our financial situation.
Money behavior is often a survival response. Humans evolved to prioritize immediate needs and belonging under uncertainty. So for people shaped by instability, such as housing insecurity, medical bills, unpredictable income, spending now or avoiding financial systems can be protective, not irrational. Modern norms like save and invest early assume stability and access that many communities haven't been granted.
In this country and within the majority American culture, the needs and goals of the individual are highly valued. We are taught to work hard, earn our own money for that work, and aspire to build wealth for ourselves. In other cultures, the needs and goals of the group or collective may have the greatest value. Taking care of the group and sharing resources with extended family members may be more important than saving it for yourself. In return, the group is expected to take care of you when you are in need. In modern Western influenced societies, there's often a need to balance individual and collective needs, depending on a person's cultural background and level of acculturation. The level of financial support given to others in one's family or tribe may vary with the needs of a particular situation. For example, traditional Japanese culture is highly collectivist or group-focused. While people participate in financial systems for saving and accruing wealth, they may also be expected to take care of their aging parents, and multi-generational households are not uncommon. The population of the United States is composed of people from many different racial, ethnic, and cultural backgrounds. Diversity in the population is an ever-changing, fluid state of immigration, acculturation, and the creation of new and overlapping identities. Some families have been here for generations and others newly arrived. We all have different and unique perspectives about money that are influenced by our personal and cultural heritage, upbringing, and experiences living outside or within this country. Immigrant communities have unique financial needs. These include having to start over in a new culture and community, possible language barriers. They may have experienced trauma prior to their coming to this country, such as war, poverty, or natural disasters, which can impact their emotional resources. They may have come here with little money and do not have financial supports available to them. They may not know about or have access to adequate financial services. They may also have different ways of saving their money, which can help them get by, but does not contribute as much to building wealth. Many immigrants in this country experience financial challenges that are often experienced in low-income households. These include inconsistent income, limited access to credit, and little to no safety net for emergencies. Many families may share resources to cover expenses, including pooling their money. A report by the Migration Policy Institute in 2019 compared the use of financial banking systems by immigrants versus the general population. They found that 15% of low-income immigrants lived in a household where no one had a checking or savings account. This is roughly double that of immigrants overall who did not have an account, that was 7%, and nearly 4 times that of the general US-born population, that was 4%. Low-income immigrants may struggle if they do not have knowledge about financial systems in this country, and even if they do, they may not be able to access them readily. They may also hesitate to use these resources if they have feelings of mistrust and fear of losing what they already have.
So I would add also, sorry, I clicked ahead, but MPI's most recent published breakdown for low-income immigrants uses 2019 census-based estimates. National unbanked rates have continued to be tracked biannually by the FDIC, and so it would be good if you had further interest to go out and see the 2023 survey. The issue is that a lot of data was changed with the census back in 2019. So this slide is the reminder that wealth is not only personal, it's systemic. Structural racism shows up through laws, policy, and institutional practices that shape who gets access to safe credit and wealth building opportunities. Housing is the clearest example. Redlining and FHA underwriting standards restricted mortgage access for Black communities for decades. And even after the Fair Housing Act, the homeownership gap has persisted. This is an important context. What looks like avoidance or mistrust can be an adaptive response to real, historical, and ongoing risk. So back in the late 80s, early 90s, I was doing affordable housing in the neighborhoods of Boston, Roxbury and Dorchester. And even after 20 years since the 1968 Civil Rights Act, I still had friends and colleagues who were fighting banks, principally Bank of Boston and Bank of New England, to take care of redlining issues that still existed within the city of Boston. This slide focuses on mechanism, how policy and institutions shape access to wealth building. This slide shows the outcome, the wealth gap over time. The data comes from the Federal Reserve Survey of Consumer Finances, a leading source for tracking household wealth in the US. This happens to display wealth by raised from a mean and median perspective. The headline is, unfortunately, persistence. Across roughly 3 decades, median net worth for white, non-Hispanic families remains far above Black and Hispanic families. To anchor the scale, Median net worth is roughly 188,000 for white families in 2019 versus 24 for Black families and about $36,000 for Hispanic families, or about 8 times and 5 times differences, respectively. The other category combines multiple identities, for example, Asian, American Indian, Alaska Native, Native Hawaiian, Pacific Islander, and multiracial. So it can mask very different realities within the groups. The purpose of this chart isn't to rank communities. It's to show that wealth is cumulative, and these gaps reflect long-standing differences in access, opportunity, and protection across generations. After looking at the data, the question becomes, what actually moves the needle? The honest answer is that progress, and I'm sure there's folks here who have been dealing with these types of questions perhaps more than I ever have for a long time. And so the honest answer is that progress requires a both-and approach, systems change and individual support. At the institutional level, the goal is to change default conditions. Who gets access to safe, affordable financial products? Who's offered fair credit? Who receives trustworthy guidance? And whether organizations build culturally responsive, accountable service models. In practice, that means expanding access to mainstream banking and investing, reducing barriers and hidden costs, improving outreach and navigation support, and strengthening cultural competence so people are not penalized for being unfamiliar with the system. At the individual level, the work is about tools and confidence. Muscle memory is how I would describe it. Practical financial literacy, and also addressing the emotional behavioral barriers that show up under stress, scarcity, trauma exposure, and inherited money beliefs. For psychologists, in my opinion, a key contribution is helping reduce negative emotions and increase agency. It's really about shifting from I'm failing to I'm responding to a history and a set of constraints, which is one step I can take with support to be able to do that. The takeaway is that closing racial wealth gaps requires pairing fairer systems with personal capability and capability building, because one without the other is unlikely to produce durable change. We've been talking about wealth gaps and what shapes them: systems, history, access, and lived experience. So as we pivot to financial literacy, I want to frame it as a practical lever that can expand stability and choice. Financial literacy isn't being good with money or having willpower or anything like that. It's the ability to understand and use basic tools to manage personal finances in a day-to-day life. At the simplest level, that includes budgeting, saving, investing over time, and managing debt and credit. But it's also more about information. It includes the skills and attitudes that support follow-through, like decision-making under stress, self-control, and risk awareness. So what does this actually change for people in real life? The short answer is that it increases stability and reduces avoidable costs, especially for people with the least margin of error. Perhaps you've heard this statistic, which is that 60% of us in the US live paycheck to paycheck. That leaves little room for error. When someone can track where money is going and prioritize essential, they're less likely to get hit with late fees, overdrafts, and surprise shortfalls. when they can build even a small buffer, one unexpected expense like a car repair or a medical bill, or maybe their hours get cut back by, at their work. This doesn't have to snowball into a crisis. And when they understand borrowing, they're better able to avoid high cost debt and use credit as a tool rather than as a treadmill. This also supports planning for big life goals like education, housing, retirement, and caregiving, and helps people spot common traps like payday loans, buy now, pay later schemes, as well as a myriad, unfortunately, amount of financial frauds. So the next question is how people learn these skills in a way that's realistic and easy. A helpful way to think about financial literacy is like learning a language. It's built through knowledge, behaviors, and candidly, a lot of practice over time. A simple organizing framework is the My Money 5, and I'll show you where that website is in a minute. And it has 5 different things, no surprise: earn, save and invest, protect, spend, and finally borrow. And the learning sequence we found most practical starts with visibility because you can't change what you can't see. That means tracking income, spending, and bill timing long enough to build a budget that reflects your real life, not the one you wish you had. The next is resilience. As I mentioned before, small emergency savings reduces the chance that a surprise becomes a spiral debt. Then protection, scams, fraud, and high-fee products are part of the landscape. So, just like there was that trust but verify, I think the new mantra is pause and verify. And that becomes a life skill because, especially with a lot of frauds, it's about getting you anxious and having you move too fast. That is their power over us. And for people who want structure, it's often better to point them into guided tools rather than expecting them to DIY it. Which brings us to the practical question. Where do we find and access this learning without cost being another barrier? And so here's a whole bunch of different places that one can go. Access matters. People don't benefit from tools they can't find, afford, or trust, especially communities that have been excluded from mainstream systems or targeted by predatory ones. So here are a few easy, low cost or no cost starting points that match different learning styles. Operation Hope for community is community-based coaching and education. America Saves for building savings habits. MyMoney.gov is where those Money 5 are, and it's a federal hub of tools and frameworks. And NEA resources, these are especially used for educators and community programs. The other ones are a little bit more esoteric. I sure hope the CFPB still exists, but I'm not quite sure at this point. FDIC is about banks, and then FINRA is for those of us who want to dabble in the stock market. So finally, it isn't a one-time class. It's a lifelong practice that evolves as we evolve. So this is a little bit of a simple roadmap that connects money skills to common transitions across adulthood. I will tell you candidly, when I was in my 20s, I thought this was all BS. And, just because we want to prove that irony's not dead in the world, I do this for a living now. I try to get people to focus on going on a journey that includes having people help them to achieve their goals. So in their 20s, in my estimation, decisions compound. You build the basics early and you start saving anything that you can. In your 30s, it's about really solidifying those routines and making some bigger decisions, often around housing, family planning, and aligning finances with a partner if relevant. In your 40s, complexity starts to increase, right? We've got families, we've got houses, and many people benefit from having what I would call a quarterback, someone who can help connect the dots across retirement savings, insurance, tax strategy, and estate planning. In your 50s, the focus is on deepening and simplifying. And what that really means is clarifying your retirement needs. It's considering long-term care planning. It's really about putting in place that safety network for yourself and for your family, and then really focusing on what matters most. We begin to be able to do that, I think, at that point in our lives. A lot of constraints going on early on. So the thread across every decade is progress over perfection. As Mickey will tell you, my favorite phrase is, Rome was not built in a day. I don't know how many times I say that in our meetings. So what we want to try and do is adjust the system as our lives changes. We want to reduce shame because at some point earlier in the process, we will have not done we know we should have done. And we want to keep building skills that increase stability, choice, and agency.
So, is financial literacy enough? Providing education and strategies for saving and investing money is an essential part of managing personal finances and building wealth. However, knowing what to do and actually following through with it do not necessarily go hand in hand. It's like saying, I need to get healthy, so I'm going to eat well and exercise every day. But then I find a million reasons not to actually do it. Besides knowledge and a step-by-step plan, we also need to have the self-confidence and motivation to reach our financial goals. Financial psychology can address this need by looking at behaviors that are getting in the way of financial health and exploring the underlying cognitive and emotional processes that drive these behaviors. But where do these underlying beliefs and feelings come from? How do we develop beliefs about money? We learn about money the same way we learn other things about the world and ourselves. Our life experiences, and especially what we learn directly and indirectly during our childhood, shape our beliefs and perceptions. Our financial beliefs are affected by our family environment, cultural background, and socioeconomic situation. We learn from our parents about how to behave with money, as they learned from their parents. Some things are taught to us by our parents, like being told not to spend irresponsibly because money doesn't grow on trees. Other things we learn by watching our parents or are transmitted less directly. For example, the parent who drops some coins in the Salvation Army donation bucket as she walks in the grocery store is showing her child that charitable giving is a good thing to do. Traumatic experiences related to money, whether experiences of our own or from past generations, can also impact our psychology around money. A man may have lost everything during the Great Depression, and his son grows up seeing his father always keeping cash hidden away in the house rather than trusting the banks or investing. Even if our socioeconomic circumstances have changed, we continue to hold on to beliefs and behaviors that could stem from generations ago. So let's talk about money experiences and beliefs. Learning about a person's family, socioeconomic status, and support systems during childhood is key to understanding their relationship with money. Asking key questions can help open up a deeper conversation about how we learned about money. And I encourage you to think about how you would answer them for yourselves. What is your earliest memory around money? What is your most painful memory about money? What is your happiest memory with money? How much stress did your family experience around money in your early years? What messages did you receive from your parents or other adults around money? What experiences have you had around money that were specific to your culture, race, and/or ethnicity? The questions we talked about help to connect us with early money-related experiences. Financial psychologists use the term financial flashpoints to describe experiences that are so emotionally powerful that they can have a lifelong impact on our financial beliefs, attitudes, and behaviors. Identifying a person's financial flashpoints and exploring the impact on their psychological development can improve their outlook and beliefs about their financial future. Okay, it's time for a quiz. No, actually, it's an interactive exercise to illustrate a point. I'm going to read you a case example, and I want you to identify the financial flashpoint in the story. Fran grew up in a very poor family that naturally had thoughts, ideas, and beliefs about rich people. She had an uncle who bought a Buick, which was a sign of status in those days, and he was almost ostracized by the family because they all drove Fords. The family's reaction to the uncle was, "Who does he think he is?" Fran learned that if she wanted to stay a member of the family, wanting to be rich was not something she could talk about or even think about. So does anybody want to share what they think is the financial flashpoint in the story? You can unmute yourself if you wanted to just call something out. And I can also say it. Okay, so the financial flashpoint, the experience that affected her for the rest of her life related to money was her uncle buying the Buick, and then the way that her family reacted to it. Okay. When we go through emotionally powerful experiences that are financial flashpoints, we try to make sense of what happened in that situation and perhaps how we can make it better in the future. We learn how to behave in a way to avoid repeating a mistake, or we work harder to try to achieve a more positive outcome. This leads to our developing beliefs about money, which we call money scripts. Money scripts are beliefs that we tell ourselves, which are often subconscious, emotionally laden, and can result in financially disordered behaviors. Some examples of money scripts are, "Money is bad," or "I don't deserve money." "There will never be enough money," or "Money will give me meaning in life." Going back to Fran's story, which I put up again just for reference, think about what money scripts the family holds. Some of their money scripts could be, "Rich people are bad." "Rich people got that way by taking advantage of other people." "Spending money on fancy things is frivolous or shameful." Dysfunctional or unhelpful money scripts lead to dysfunctional behaviors. For example, a psychologist holds the following money scripts: "I don't deserve to have money. It is virtuous not to want money." As a result of these dysfunctional beliefs, they engage in maladaptive behavior. They give away services at low cost or free, which impacts their financial well-being, and they have to close their practice. In the case of Fran, who we saw before, she probably has money problems as an adult because of her internalized beliefs. She might avoid any personal spending and feel guilt or shame if she does. Or she might spend money as soon as she gets it so that she never has too much money on hand. When we have harmful beliefs and fears about money, then we are likely to behave in ways that can hurt our financial health. Once dysfunctional money scripts have been uncovered and explored, they can be challenged and replaced with more healthy, positive money scripts. For example, the psychologist in the last scenario could challenge her money scripts and behaviors with rational thinking. "I can help more people if my practice stays open, and the only way to do that is to charge a reasonable rate for my services." Then the psychologist can develop new money scripts such as, "I deserve to have money. Virtue is not related to money." Sometimes it can be helpful to use assessment tools to help us understand a person's relationship with money. One useful assessment tool for identifying money scripts is the Klontz Money Script Inventory Revised. The KMSIR consists of 32 questions which are rated on a 6-point scale, with items such as, I do not deserve a lot of money when others have less than me, and money buys freedom. Items fall into 4 categories: money avoidance, or not wanting to think about money worship or focus, which is thinking money will solve all problems and is one of the most important things in life, money status, thinking that money gives you power, and money vigilance, being very focused on saving and not spending money. Another helpful assessment tool that can be used when working with clients who seem to be very stressed about money is the Financial Anxiety Scale by Shapiro and Burchell. The FAS is a questionnaire designed to measure anxiety related to financial issues. Respondents rate their feelings on a 5-point scale across 10 statements with items such as, I feel anxious when I think about my financial situation, and I have difficulty sleeping because of my financial worries. This scale can help identify individuals who may need support in financial planning or may need psychological intervention. As we have learned, helping someone identify their money beliefs and understand where they came from can lead to better emotional health and positive behavior change. I believe learning about our beliefs and relationship with money may be particularly important for individuals who have experienced traumatic events and discrimination, either directly or through multi-generational transfer. As a first-generation immigrant myself, and a person of color, and a woman, I have struggled with my own negative money scripts and unhelpful behaviors around money. Helping people to develop healthier beliefs and feelings about money can increase their trust in accessing financial systems and allow for greater learning of financial literacy.
So up to now, we've talked about financial literacy as practical skills. This slide is the next step. Financial health is both technical and human. On the technical side, it includes the basics we've talked about: allocating money, sticking to a budget, saving for long-term goals like college and retirement, and investing so money can grow. But financial health also depends on how someone relates to money, their beliefs, emotions, and the pattern they learned, as Mickey mentioned, in their family and culture. Because two people can have the same numbers on paper and behave very differently, depending on things like fear, shame, scarcity, or a history of instability. So the question I want to hold as we transition to this financial health question is as follows. Is financial health the same thing as a good life? Is there more than money? To answer that, we need a better target than more money. We need a definition of well-being that actually reflects what people are trying to feel and do in their lives. Financial well-being is personal. It's just not income, net worth, or a credit score. The CFPB frames it as the extent to which your money situation gives you security and freedom of choice now and in the future. Practically, that shows up in 4 simple questions. Do you have control month to month? Can you absorb a shock? Are you on track toward goals that matter to you? Do you have enough freedom to make choices that help you enjoy life? And the important part of this work, especially for you all as psychologists, is that the definition is subjective and dynamic. It can change across seasons of life, identity, caregiving roles, health, and community responsibilities. And I think the challenge for us in a social justice context is to be able to support whatever definition someone has for themselves and give them the tools and the emotional and cognitive kind of freedoms to be able to pursue that. And that brings us to an even bigger idea. If well-being is self-defined, then wealth has to be bigger than a number 2. And this is something that Mickey and I spend a lot of time in our work with clients. Financial security matters, no question, absolutely. But most people don't ultimately want money for its own sake. They want what money can support. It's a tool And if we're going to give to communities that have been historically marginalized or systematically uh, you know put down, then I think we need to get the idea of what money can support is stability, dignity, options, and the ability to care for people and pursue what matters. So this slide is an invitation to broaden the definition of wealth beyond financial capital. And I'll add another thing that we talk about at Euclid Harding, which is really for all of us to think about not just the changing the definition of wealth, but it's also changing the definition of our personal capital. Personal capital from our perspective is your time, your energy, attention, and money. And so a lot of those things are not numbers based, although time certainly feels that way sometimes. All of those things can be deployed to do some really important work. And if we set aside the numbers for a moment, the questions turn into, what do you value most? What does success actually look like and mean to you? What does a good life look like in your relationships, your purpose, your community? Because for many people, the deepest sense of wealth is not tangible. It's about connection, meaning, agency, belonging, health, and contribution. And this is where we want to treat sort of this whole process, that evolution that I showed a few pages back, really as a tool in the service of a life, and as maybe even in a community in some definitions. But it's about helping people move through really complex transitions with a greater level of clarity, alignment, and confidence, not just a bigger balance sheet. In other words, the thought process is to go after total wealth, aligning our financial choices with values, relationships, and the life someone is trying to build. So the plan and that process supports the person, not the other way around. And I think for clinicians like you all, this offers, I hope, a useful framework. Helping people name their values and goals really increases agency and makes practical financial steps feel connected to meaning rather than something about compliance with the ways of the world and our standards from a Western viewpoint or otherwise, or deprivation.
Combining ideas from financial psychology with strategies from financial literacy is the most effective way to help people improve their financial health. We can build a strong foundation if we have knowledge about how to prioritize spending, how to invest in assets that can help money to grow, and how to create savings for the future. We need to understand how our decision-making and behaviors are impacted by our learned and sometimes dysfunctional beliefs and emotions. We need to consider these within the context of our family relationships and cultural background. This will help us take actions to improve our financial health. We also need to look forward and beyond money. Reflecting on our values, relationships, and dreams is important so that we can clarify what goals we want to achieve with our money.
So to wrap up this presentation, I'd like to try and summarize some important takeaways I hope we have left with you today. When working to promote social justice, one aspect that is integral for improving people's lives is financial health, and developing financial literacy is essential. In addition to providing education in financial literacy, we must also address the cognitive and emotional factors influencing beliefs and behaviors around money. We must consider an individual's cultural and ethnic background, socioeconomic situation, childhood experiences, and lessons learned from our parents and adults, as they all play a part in influencing the development of the beliefs and values related to money. Financial education programs and financial planning services should be designed with flexibility for individual differences and needs. Having a conversation about finances and personal relationships with money is key to change and and growth. Identifying a person's financial flashpoints and money scripts can really help uncover attitudes, beliefs, and motivations that impact behaviors. Wealth, we believe, can be viewed with a holistic perspective that includes values and relationships which give life meaning and which I hope will lift up all peoples to be able to have a fulfilling life.
Thank you for listening. I'd like to leave you with another inspiring quote from John Hope Bryant. When individuals know how to budget, save, invest, and manage debt, they gain greater control of their financial lives, and the cycle of poverty begins to crumble. At the end of this presentation, yes? Sorry.
Oh, I just wanted to show some important disclosures.
Okay.
Just so Vicki and I live in a regulated world, much as you all do. And so I just wanted to put these up on the screen. Thank you so much. Let me stop.
And there are in the presentation, there are also some pages of references if you want to do more reading.
Shall we open it up for questions, Nikki?
Yes, we enjoyed. Wonderful presentation. So,
thank you.
Any question?
I don't know. Question. Yeah, are people muted or is it?
No, they're able to unmute themselves now if they would like to ask a question.
Okay, I think Jan had a question.
Jan, go ahead.
You're still muted though. Jan, can you? Oh, there you go.
Yes. Well, certainly was a wonderful presentation, and I had so many thoughts going on in my head about financial literacy. I thought, where was this presentation when I was in graduate school? This would have come in very handy in terms of helping me to shape my career path. But it's still not in graduate schools. So consider that as a course that you might want to teach. I know that when I decided to become a psychologist, at the forefront of my thinking was that I wanted to help people. Making money and making a living for myself was secondary. And it was instilled in me based on my own culture that I needed to help people. So during all of my career of accepting copays and all of that, I never really thought about making money and building, quote, wealth. That seems to not be any part of my thinking. So I thank you for this presentation because it helps me to reflect on the fact that I never lost sight of my mission. And I always laugh and say to my husband, I never made much money being a psychologist. In actuality, when it's all said and done, I probably could have done a much better job if I had financial literacy as part of my teaching, and also had business goals in mind that I could focus on, as well as helping people. One does not have to conflict with the other. But
exactly,
yeah.
Jan.
So very good.
I totally agree with you. Thank you. I totally agree with you because, as a psychologist, I always had that same kind of view, and it wasn't really till recently that I started to understand things better from a financial perspective and said, what have I been doing my whole life? Does anybody else have a comment or question?
If not, I'm back.
I think
maybe Rosalind.
Okay.
And Christina.
Oh, I think you just have to unmute yourself.
Okay, I was unmuting at the wrong place. I'm sorry. thought at the end. I've been reading recently about gambling addictions and gambling problems in our country. Currently, there was just a big article about that. The ex-police chief in New Haven and how people thought it was a tragedy because he seemed to be a very good police chief, but he succumbed to gambling addiction. And I was wondering if that appears in your work at all and how that fits, if at all.
Actually, usually if there's something more severe like that, like a gambling addiction, that really requires more intensive therapy. So what I do with the financial psychologies and kind of the financial behavior coaching is not that intense. And I would definitely refer them to a therapist for that because it's much more involved.
Okay, thank you.
So if I may jump in, just as a thought, I mean, I think we've all watched the proliferation of DraftKings and this and that and the other thing in our society. And without making any kind of political statement per se, I would say that both for young people and for communities that are on the fringes of the financial system, there is a certain amount of financial nihilism that I think goes into people taking up gambling because they don't see the normal, what I would say is more normal mainstream pathways to gaining wealth. And so therefore they take on risky behaviors that probably, unless they're very lucky, will be counterproductive to their financial health in the future. And so I think that is a struggle for both perhaps younger groups and then other aspects related to lower socioeconomic status groups overall, is we need to get them on the path to be able to pursue what I would call more mainstream, like we save in our 401k plans, we put aside a college fund for our kids. We may not have as much, all of us, to be able to do that, but it will still provide a lot of benefits versus just putting it all on red, so to speak. Christina?
Yeah, thanks. I'm thinking about the earlier part of the presentation and that idea of getting a Buick. For me, a lot of that resonated very, very emotionally with the idea of getting an education, that you would differentiate yourself from your group, from your family group. Certainly as a woman in my circumstances, it was considered really unusual along the lines of who do you think you are? You know, to pursue an education and keep pursuing it when you were going to be married and someone would take care of you and all that kind of stuff. But I think it's in so many ways echoing through why would you accumulate what I consider security when there are so many needs, there are other things. But for me, the financial link with security, no matter how many people I might have been supporting at one point or another, or helping to educate, or now at this point in my career, thinking about, have I established enough security that I can begin to look at where can I redistribute something that would be immediately helpful to people, immediately meaningful for people to get past that one smaller barrier so that they can go ahead with their education, or they can go ahead with, being able to move out of really dangerous circumstances into a more secure setting. And there are ways of, I think, looking at funds as meaningful beyond a dollar amount. A means to a different end.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yeah, very much so. I think, and with saving, just again, saving because you only have a little bit and you're just trying to have that little bucket to get you through the next thing or the next crisis. Sometimes that is how it feels we have to operate. Yet being able to allocate some of that for that fund and maybe just a tiny bit that you can be putting away into a system that could be, getting you're making much more money off of it for the future, 20 years, 30 years down the road, that it's just hard to see that without getting that financial literacy. And as Jan said, they don't teach that to any of us in school. I mean, they don't teach, when I was in school, they didn't teach you how to run a business, how to have a private practice, anything. So, we just don't come out. We want to go help people, but then we don't really have the tools to help us be able to do that in the long run and make sure we're okay for the future too.
So I'll expand on that just a little bit, which is I think having the tools and the basics is becoming even more important. And the reason why I say that is I think in terms of all the changes related to AI and other things, now luckily you all deal with people. So hopefully we're going to try and, hopefully people will still want to talk to people as opposed to machines, although I don't know all the time. But I think we all need the basic tools and education about financial literacy because to a degree, what I was reflecting on when you were speaking, Christina, was that there were a certain set of old roadmaps that we could follow to be at least moderately successful. Whereas I think the sort of safe paths no longer guarantee stability. And what we need to do is have the tools to be adaptable and have the option to pivot. And that's really what is going to make people more successful and have a better safety net going forward, especially in marginalized communities. I'll just give one example. I think from my own perspective that the old roadmap of going to college, getting a good education, meeting important people, developing your connections, and going to work for that first right job, in my mind, doesn't guarantee success. And we can see that with the unemployment rates for young adults at this point coming out of college. So we really need to be scrappy and adaptable. And so even more important to have the literacy and understand our emotions around money and ourselves so that we can move forward with confidence.
Excellent. Thank you so much. So we are going to close. Andrew will read the closing and you can do the evaluation for the CE. But I ask our speakers to stay a couple of minutes after the closing if there are other questions. And I do appreciate your attention.
And can I just say, I'm happy also to, anybody can email me. I'm, everywhere in CPA, you could easily find me, but I'm sure Shiva could connect you with me if you have questions later.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Andrew.
All right. Thank you all for joining us this evening. We are excited to announce that our next event will be on May 28th, featuring Dr. Ronald Levant, the past APA president, as our esteemed speaker. Dr. Levant, in the area of psychology of men and masculinities, will present next May 28th. I want to emphasize that together we are the facilitators of change and empowerment for individuals and the community. Regardless of the amount, your generous donation to the Social Justice Speaker Series helps ensure that the education and awareness remain powerful tools for making a difference in our community. The donation link and mailing address are available in the chat if you would like to support us. For those registered for continuing education credits, I invite you to complete the CE evaluation via the link you receive on your certificate, which is also now in the chat. Once again, thank you so much for joining us, and we hope to see you next month.
Thank you again, everyone. Good night. We are going to say a couple of more minutes for additional questions. Dr. Jan, did you have a question?
I was interested in knowing whether gentrification that is occurring in different urban areas, whether that's something that you've thought about or know about, because that seems to be one of the barriers that are keeping people from moving forward, especially communities of color. A lot of corporations and people of wealth are buying up old houses in neighborhoods and disenfranchising and moving people out of their neighborhoods. And that just seems to be occurring quite rapidly, particularly in urban centers. Universities are doing it. They're buying up houses and properties. And so people who have lived in their neighborhoods for long periods of time are displaced. And so that's becoming more of a problem, especially in the urban centers.
So I'll jump in as an old real estate guy. So gentrification is a cyclical problem that, especially during time periods when real estate prices go rapidly higher, essentially the folks with the money are going to go to wherever they can to get some values. Obviously real estate is local, but you can see it here in Connecticut. The prices for real estate have gone parabolic in the last couple of years, and that means there's a lot of gentrification issues that are going on. The flip side, of course, is that there are many markets right now that are down significantly, and I don't think that even in that certain circumstance, it's helpful to communities that have undergone gentrification. I think what we saw in that one slide was, and this is partially as a function of wealth, is that communities of color sort of bobble around. It gets a little bit better during periods of economic expansion, and then doesn't fall as much because of the economic inclusion is not as great for the majority populations. And so this is a difficult problem that has been going on for a long time, and I don't know how to solve either of those two things. The aspect of increased gentrification during high real estate prices, or the fact that communities of color just aren't included enough to maybe even benefit from that. So I think what I would sort of suggest in this idea of home ownership as a means to getting wealth, I would say at this part of the cycle, when things are so extended, we need to be more cognizant that we have to be savvy about how we make our choices, whether you're a majority or minority person, to be able to overcome where things are really expensive. And if you just believe in mean reversion, and we've seen this in places like Nashville and Austin, housing prices have gone down by 40%. And I don't want anybody to be on the receiving end of that, because that, as a major asset in people's traditional balance sheets, will be quite painful. So I just leave you with those thoughts. I wish I had a solve for gentrification, but the best folks have not been able to deal.
Thank you.
So if there is not any other question, I want to say thank you again to our speakers. Great job. An excellent presentation. Thank you to all our audience. Thank you so much for your participation, questions, and everything. So looking forward to seeing you next month. Bye-bye.
Thank
Thank
you.
you. Bye-bye.